very much for showing up here and online. We have something around over 770 people online right now, and it keeps going up. Let's see, I want to acknowledge the fact that we have some visitors from Philippines. Thank you very much for joining us. We have a very good relationship and have several awards from Philippines under a project which is called Philippine California Advanced Research Institute Project, PICARI. We have been working, several researchers have been working collaboratively with their colleagues in Philippines. And we have had several times that delegations from Philippines have come here to visit us. Thank you very much for coming. We have a delegation right now visiting yesterday and today here, and they go to Merced later today. The relationships are in San Francisco, LA, here, and now Merced is adding. So we have members from University of Philippines, as well as cluster on education and environment, national government sector we have here, as well as representatives from Commission of Higher Education. Thank you very much for coming over and welcome. So with that, as usual, we do have some updates. And then, as you all know, this is time for members of the department to ask questions and put members of sponsored programs and accounting and IRB and so on and so forth on the spot to answer your questions. If you can't answer the questions now, we will find the answers for you. So with that, let's start. The first presentation is by Cindy Gates, Director of IRB, regarding some NIH updates. Cindy?
Thank you, Ahmed. So how many of you know what a certificate of confidentiality is? Jessica, raise your hand. So we're all going to know pretty soon because the NIH just issued. Oh, I have to be here. The NIH just issued guidance stating that whenever you get funding for human subject research through the NIH that collects identifiers, you are going to automatically be granted a certificate of confidentiality. And so it's an automatic thing. It used to be that certificates of confidentiality came out in the 1970s when a lot of researchers were starting to do research on abuse, drug abuse, and some other illicit behaviors. And they wanted to get protections for the subjects in that. And so Congress approved this process for certificates of confidentiality where researchers would not have to disclose identifiers of the subjects whenever they got a subpoena or a warrant. And this could be a subpoena from Congress. You know, they don't have to disclose the subject's names or any identifiers. And so the process has been that you did an application for the certificate of confidentiality. You did that to the NIH, and the NIH would grant it or not based on the sensitivity of the information collected and whether the research meets one of the missions of the NIH. Well, under the American Cures Act? Yeah, the American Cures Act, Congress has said that all research funded by NIH should be, the subjects in it should be protected. And so now it doesn't really matter whether or not the information is sensitive or not. It really just matters if it's identifiable. And so in a nutshell, it's going to apply to all biomedical, behavioral, clinical, or other research funded by NIH that was commenced or ongoing after December 13, 2016. So it's retroactive to last year. Those studies have a certificate of confidentiality now. And if an individual is identified, or if there's even a very small risk, that combination of information could lead to the identity of an individual. So they now consider research collecting or using identifiable information to include all human subject research, except exempt where the data is recorded in a manner that subjects, except exempt where the data is recorded where patients cannot be or subjects cannot be identified. So it's even exempt research if you're collecting identifiers. Biospecimens are considered human subjects when they're identifiable, or if there's a very small chance that you could identify the person from the biospecimen. Now, think about it. With the genetic research and things like that going on, there is a pretty good chance you can identify people now with biospecimens. Research involving the generation of individual level human genomic data, such like that, it's automatically considered under a certificate of confidentiality. And just again, all research that involves the risk that an individual could be identified again. So it's pretty cut and plain. Most human subject research is going to require a certificate of confidentiality. It will be applied. You don't have to submit an application or anything, it's just there. And this is just the NIH right now doing it. I imagine the other funding agencies will do the same. The Department of Justice right now already has their own COC process, and you have to obligate yourself to do that. So the COC puts a burden on the institution and on the researcher. You've got to be very careful about disclosing information. Once you disclose the information outside of the research, then it's not going to be protected by the COC. And so it gives you more onus to restrict and limit who has access to the identifiers. Now, the data itself could be shared with no identifiers, but it's the identifier that's protected. So what if you're doing research, behavioral research, and you find out that one of your subjects is abusing elderly people? What do you do then? You have the COC. Any suggestions?
Mandated reporter would supersede it.
Right. So what you have to do then is put information in your consent form that says, this research is protected by a certificate of confidentiality. Here's what the certificate of confidentiality does, and here's what it doesn't do. And it would not prevent the researcher or mandated reporters from reporting things they have to report. So you can put limitations in the consent document to the COC, and that's what you have to be very cognizant of, is that you do that. So, are they going to get a copy of these slides?
They could make them available.
Yeah, please do.
Sure.
I don't want to just read them all. Y'all can just read all of that. The big thing for you guys here is when you do NIH-funded research, you have to protect those identifiers. So what if you want to do secondary research on the data you collected on the first research? Or you have a researcher who wants to do secondary research on the data that you've collected in the primary research. You could share that without identifiers, or you could have in the consent document that it might be shared for other research. So you have to have these internal controls. You have to make sure if you're sharing it with investigators not funded by NIH, and they receive a copy of the identifiable sensitive information, that they continue to protect it as they would. It should understand that they're subject to this policy. So in our non-disclosure agreements and stuff, we're going to have to amend those to include protected as you would a COC, which would be protected against, what is it protected against? A warrant, a subpoena. Okay. NIH expects investigators to inform the research participants. So what we have to do now is go back to those studies that were approved December 13, 2016, and move forward and revise all of those consent documents. and this is a big chore, you know, for the IRB. We'll be trying to identify those. And so we'll be sending out emails to the research that qualifies under this and asking for the revision. And this is the language that the NIH suggests that we use. And that's kind of, it pretty much is what we use. I'll let you read it. So it does include some of the exclusions from the COC for mandated reporting. So.
What if there's already a warrant out there in place? And
if it was issued after December 13, 2016, and you haven't shared the information yet, then it's protected. And the other side of that is that UC Davis, or University of California Systems, has to legally defend the COC. It could cost millions of dollars to legally defend a COC. I only know of 2 cases where this has come up, and one was with Harvard, and it was, they wanted some of the data because, of all things, a sibling of a subject was under arrest for murder, and they wanted to get some of the siblings' blood to see if there's a familial relationship. I mean, that's how odd it could be. So you could also imagine custody suits, you know, things like that. There are subpoenas that come up with this. It's also interesting, though, the Department of Justice subpoenas a lot because of the Medicare billing issues. And I don't know what we do about that. We won't be able to give the records to the Department of Justice if they do it. So your next steps is, well, we're going to identify NIH studies. If you know of an NIH study that involves human subjects and you're collecting identifiers, you can proactively contact the IRB and ask for a revision to the consent document to include the NIH language. Otherwise, I'm going to run a report of all the NIH studies and look at them to see if they qualify, and it's going to take some time on that. Do you have any questions? Yes.
You said that the COC issues automatically. Does that mean there's no counter signature by the institution?
You don't have to sign it.
Could you repeat the question,
if you
please?
get the grant, the question is, does there need to be a signature for by the institution for the COC? And that used to be a big thing. The institutional official had to obligate the institution to defend the COC, so it required this higher up signature. And so now I guess if we accept the money from NIH to do the research, that's the same as obligating us to defend the COC. And it's not going to be the NIH that defends it. It's going to be UC Davis attorneys or UCOP attorneys that defend it. So what do you do if you get a subpoena for research records and it falls under the group that automatically has the COC? You need to notify the Office of Research and notify UC Campus Legal. Both. Anything else they should do?
Well, actually, to make that a little bit more,
Audit usually handles those.
Right.
So legal counsel with internal audit.
Internal audit.
Consultants usually are external audit liaison.
Okay.
Or, you know, so I would engage legal counsel and potentially, depending on what kind of stuff they're asking for.
Yeah, if they ask for anything identifiable, any identifiers, then you need to notify OR, legal counsel, and internal audit.
If you only notify OR, we also know we need to notify legal counsel.
Yeah, we'll do it too.
So, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any questions? Thank you very much. Just an update with the IRB. If you have other questions about anything with the IRB, we are still moving forward with AHRP accreditation, which any day now within the next 2 weeks, I should have a date of the site visit, but I've been saying that now for a month and I don't have that date yet. So we'll get a date, we'll get a list of names on the site visit of who is going to be interviewed. And so anyone in this room or online could probably be interviewed by the AHRP accreditors if you're involved in human subject research. We also have the single IRB moving forward. We have 2 proposals, I believe, right now that will include the single IRB plan, and we're working on getting the pricing together for the budget on it. And so we're a little bit behind now on that, trying to get it all together. But if you work on a proposal that involves human subjects and it's funded by NIH, it's going to be granted after January 25th, you need to plan for single IRB, which means one IRB will review all of the US sites. And that could be UC Davis. If you're not the lead, it could be the campus where the lead PI is, but it's only one IRB, and it takes a lot of coordination initially, a lot of time. And then the revised common rule, I haven't heard anything yet about whether or not it's come out of the review. That was supposed to last 60 days and started in February. And it's still under review. So I really don't know what's happened with that, but we at the IRB are getting our policies revised and getting ready to go live on the date. It's supposed to be the 19th of January right now, but we're getting ready to go live on that. Other thing, definition of clinical trials. So right now, if you're conducting an NIH-sponsored clinical trial, which is a really weird definition, there are some FAQs to help you, and you look up NIH clinical trial definition FAQs, and you can go read through and help decide if your project really is a clinical trial as defined by the NIH. It's very, very difficult to apply, and the whole US right now is battling NIH over this definition, it seems like. But if you can't decide, the IRB is not going to decide for you. It would require you to go to your program officer and get your program officer's opinion as to whether or not your research is a clinical trial. And if it is a clinical trial, you have to do 2 additional things. Does anyone know what they are? Okay, you have to take GCP training. If it's a behavioral study, you can take the GCP behavioral training on CITI. I recommend that everyone take that GCP behavioral training. It's really good.
What's GPC?
GCP, good clinical practice.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter if it's a real clinical trial. It could be behavioral trial. If you're assigning people to interventions, and if you're trying to see the outcome of those interventions, it's a clinical trial. And so it could be playing a game, or it could be a heart transplant, either one. So you have to do GCP training, good clinical practice training, and then you also have to post your study on clinicaltrials.gov. And there's big fines and big risk if you don't comply with those 2 things. And you'll put your peers at risk, because the penalty would be that the NIH would no longer fund research till we get compliance. That's what the threat is. They haven't done it yet, but that's what the threat is. So, any questions about that? I have such good news, don't I? Blame the NIH? No.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Cindy. On this issue of definition of clinical trial, if you are not confused enough, I'm going to make you even more confused. All of these definitions that we talk about, obviously it's NIH, any project funded by federal government is subject to full indirect applicable federal negotiated rate. The reason I am saying that is that I want to make sure that those who get involved in clinical trial, which is subject to a lower indirect cost rate, 26% now, none of this would, this definition would make a project which is right now subject to something more than 26, bring it down 26. In other words, even if you fit in these definitions of NIH, quote unquote clinical trial, human involvement and so on and so forth, there are certain projects that projects in nutrition, for example, tasting, so on and so forth, that are not, they do not qualify for 26% indirect cost rate. So be careful about that. That definition has not changed. So hopefully that's clear there. What they're looking for. Okay, let's see. Next person is, I guess you would be giving us some updates on Cayuse, right?
So we have Grace on the agenda, but I'm going to
Be Grace.
be Grace.
Okay.
I'm Cassie pretending to be Grace. Okay, so what I wanted to do was give everyone an update on Cayuse SP. One, I think everyone in the room is aware that we're rolling out to Cayuse SP. I just want to pull something up real quick. That we're rolling out to Cayuse SP shortly. Some of you are starting to use it now to submit your proposals to sponsored programs. So let me find my share screen. Okay, so there is a copy of this for everyone if you would like it in the back, but this outlines our phased rollout. So you'll see we're just coming to the end of September, and by the end of this month, College of Engineering, the various units that report up to the offices of the Chancellor and Provost, as well as the School of Law, are all beginning to use SP to submit their proposals to sponsored programs. So by the end of this month, they'll no longer be submitting a data sheet unless they are submitting a proposal that is with a department that has key personnel from a department that is not participating yet. So for example, if College of Engineering is submitting a proposal that involves a co-PI from College of Agricultural and Environmental Sciences, and that department in the College of Ag is not using SP yet, the College of Engineering will still submit the old way. And that's just so we can make sure that all of the appropriate approvals can happen. And if anyone has questions on that, you can feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help provide any clarification. So this schedule that you all have in the back, it goes through December. By the end of December, everyone will be using SP. So come January 1st, we expect to see no data sheets. If everyone can please remember that, that would be great. Yeah, and I'll talk about 424 as well. So going along with our rollout of SP, we've scheduled training sessions every month. There are, I think, about 8 training sessions each month. They're each an hour-and-a-half long. Some of them are in computer labs and some of them are not. So that's indicated on this sheet of paper that you all have, which is also on our website, and it's been broadcast in various ways. So, and there's a registration link to actually register for these training sessions. And it's on our website, which is spark.ucdavis.edu/training. And this has been sent out various methods, but just in case anyone hasn't gotten it, that's where you can access it. And I ask that you register because there is limited space in the computer labs. So for example, I just checked before getting up here, and our 9 a.m. session this Friday is full. So I've closed registration for that, but we have a lot of space left in that 11 a.m. session. So if you, any of your faculty, any of your colleagues want to come, please register. We have quite a few seats left for the 11 a.m. session, and that is in a computer lab. I see that we had a question popping up. Yeah, hold on one moment, Brooke. Let me see. Oh, never mind. Somebody asked if they should encourage their faculty to attend. Yes, please do. Please do. I would love to have faculty there. The second session I did was actually mostly faculty, and it's really interesting because I get different questions from you than I do from them, and it's actually kind of fun, and I think it will help them. Did you have something to say, Brooke?
Oh, I was just wondering if that 11 a.m. class, that's not just for the College of Engineering, that's for anybody.
Right. It's a really good question. So you are welcome to come to any of these sessions, regardless of what college you are in. However, by the end of the month that your college is being phased in, we will have expected you to get the training because you'll be using the system. For example, if you're in College of Engineering, come October 1st, for most cases, you're using SP. So we do, that's a great point. Okay, so that's all I have to say about the actual rollout and the training. If anyone has questions, does anyone have any more questions about that? Okay, so going along with that, Cindy brought up Cayuse 424. Cayuse 424, I hope everyone is aware, is an alternative to grants.gov. And as of December 31st, Cayuse 424, or not Cayuse 424, as of December 31st, grants.gov is getting rid of their Adobe packages, their Adobe Forms packages, and they're moving over to a new system that does not include that. So as of December 31st, everyone is expected to use Cayuse 424 for grants.gov submissions, with a few exceptions. If your sponsor is mandating that you submit through a specific site or portal, of course you will do that. And if you're applying to NSF, use Fastlane. Do not use 424. Use Fastlane for NSF. And it's also okay to use Assist if you're applying to NIH. But we can support you better if you use 424, because in sponsored programs, we're more familiar with 424. So we highly encourage that. And what we're hoping to mitigate any confusion is that in your month that you're being phased into SP, you also implement this 424 mandatory process. So for instance, we would expect that College of Engineering would also be mandating that they use 424 by the end of this month for grants.gov submissions. However, that hard stop is December 31st. That's the hard stop. Are there any questions about any of that? I know we talk about it a lot. Is there anything else you want to add, Cindy?
It's slightly off topic from Cayuse, but it's about.
Okay, hold on one moment, and then I'll give the mic to you. So the last Cayuse thing I want to talk about, you can come up, Cindy. This will take just a moment. The last Cayuse thing I want to talk about is that because what we're doing in sponsored programs is we assign a role manager or role managers for a department or unit. And that person is responsible on behalf of their department chair or center or unit director to make sure that those roles are set up appropriately. And two of the most critical roles I'm talking about here are the IPF or internal processing form approver role, as well as the pre-award spending approver role. And the internal processing form is the proposal or the data sheet. And so those approvers are generally the directors or the chairs of a department or a center. However, sometimes the chairs designate that to someone else. So we have a form that we're asking all of the chairs complete. They just have to put in their department, their name, and sign it, acknowledging that they understand what the characteristics of those roles are, and that they will ensure that they remain aware of who has those roles and let us know if they see something that's inconsistent with that policy. So on the agenda, there is a link to that. You can also find it on our forms page. If you go to the Office of Research website and go to forms, it's in the contracts and grants section. And we're asking for those to be returned by the end of the month that your college is being phased in. So some of my pilot departments have already provided it. I already have it from, I think I've received 5 back so far. But so if you're in engineering, we're hoping that all of those department chairs will have submitted those forms just by the end of the month. So that's how we're working that out. Are there any questions about that? Do you see anything, Cindy, on the chat box? No? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over. Right. Okay, got it. So the question is the rollout the beginning of the month or the end of the month? And what it is we are expecting each college to be fully using SP by the end of that month. So if you're in College of Ag, we're expecting that you will be fully using SP by October 31st. So anything you submit November 1st, you would expect to be on a data sheet. However, you're welcome to start using it as soon as that month begins, or even earlier if you get your department chair on board and get those approvers set up. There's nothing stopping you from using it earlier unless you're in School of Veterinary Medicine. We have a few things to work out there. But other than that, you can actually come on board earlier. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Cindy. I know she had something she wanted to say. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Okay, just a brief comment. The other part of this project that we're working on are reporting mechanisms across the campus for your department heads, deans, and the vice chancellors and the chancellor. So these are kind of high-level metadata dashboards that we're preparing. If you're one of the individuals that already have access to our adaptive tool, this is we have designed a replacement for adaptive. Initially, our go live date was going to be in December, but we have made huge progress and we're going to be ready to launch those dashboards by October 31st. So I'm going to be meeting with the deans and assistant deans next week it's called an ACCD meeting. I can't remember what the acronym means, but I'll be meeting with them and we're going to be demoing these new dashboard reports with them. And we're going to be onboarding individuals who need that access between now and the end of October. The reason I say onboarding is because the server is going to be managed by Central IET, not by Office of Research, because it's a Tableau server. And it has a lot of benefits, but they're going to be requiring what's called dual authentication for security purposes. So some of you might be familiar with it because some banks are doing this now, not all, but you have to set up a cell phone or alternate mechanism for security purposes. So you first would log on with your Kerberos password, right, online, but then it sends a notice to a cell phone or some other device, and then you have to click on that in order to actually make the access happen. So for security reasons, we have to like set up a cell phone or a mobile device or a laptop if you're one of those individuals that's getting access to the dashboard reports. And that'll be happening through October. So not everyone will have access to that, but if you are one of those folks that need that, working in a dean's office or those kinds of things, we're hoping to get people set up as quickly as possible. So you heard it before the deans got to hear it. All righty. That's what I have.
Thank you very much. So let's see. Next thing I have on the list, a discussion of current and pending support. Who is the analyst who was going to talk about that? Okay, a couple of analysts. Christine, thank you. You have to be a little bit in the middle so they see you.
Hi, my name is Christine Larson. Can you hear me? My name is Christine Larson. I work on the proposal team in SPO. So some of my colleagues and I wanted to talk about the differences between an NIH Biosketch, specifically research support, versus NIH other support. And there we go. And the differences between NSF Biosketch and NSF current and pending support. So I'm going to mostly talk about the research support, which is part of the Biosketch. So the Biosketch is made up of 8 different parts. Things like contributions to science, positions and honors, personal statement, education and training is part of the Biosketch. And the section that people get confused about most is the research support. And they get that confused with the NIH other support. And what I see happen sometimes is that they'll take information that's included in the NIH other support and they'll do a copy and paste into the Biosketches, but that's not what you want to do. So it's really important to make sure that the Biosketch is in compliance, meaning that you're following the structure of what needs to be included in the correct format, because there is a notice from NIH that says if you don't conform to their policies, that your whole application could potentially be withdrawn if the Biosketch is not in the correct format. So on the NIH Biosketch, if you go to the NIH website under forms, you could actually download the correct form for the Biosketch. So currently NIH is using the Form D. And it's good to note that for any applications that are due January 25th or after January 25th or after 2018, that the Form E will need to be used. So that's good to know because, you know, we're here in October and before you know it, January will be here. You'll need to make sure that all your PIs have updated Biosketches. And I'm not exactly sure, I haven't looked at the changes, but there was quite a few changes between the last format and the D format. Another thing I want to mention too, when you're on if you go to download the form on the NIH website, there's a big button there and it's called the Science Experts Network CV. If you click on that, it's really nice because it's a tool that you can use to convert your current NIH Form D into the new Form E. And it also, what's nice about it too is you could use it for other federal agencies. So take your NIH Biosketch and convert it over to NSF or USDA. So it's a really helpful tool to use, and it's worth checking out. So when do you need to submit your Biosketch? So you want to submit that with your proposal. So in the key personnel section, every individual that's listed there, you want to include the Biosketch. And so what is the purpose of the research support section or the Biosketch? So the actual purpose of the research support section is to show the accomplishments of the PI and all those that are on the research project. And the information that's included in the research support section is used by the NIH reviewers to make sure that the PI and all those that are on the research team are qualified to do the work that's specified in the proposed proposal. So what do you want to include in the research support section? You want to include ongoing and completed research projects for the last 3 years, and this includes federal and non-federal funding. You don't want to include number of person months or direct costs. Is there any questions on this? Okay, so I'll go ahead and turn the time over to Marlene, and she's going to cover NIH other
There's
support.
a question there.
Yeah.
Can you put multiple versions of your Biosketch into Cayuse so that it makes it easy to upload things depending on the agency?
Repeat the question.
Including this.
Okay, so the question is, can you upload several versions of your Biosketch into Cayuse 424 to make sure you're using the right one? You can do that. I wouldn't suggest doing that because you want to make sure you have the most current one, because then it gets confusing of which one to include. So I would say just to include the most updated version, because otherwise it gets confusing for the administrator to know which one to use, and sometimes they end up using an old version. So I'd suggest not doing that. Yeah.
Could you bring her back?
Could you say it again about where to convert the Biosketch format between NIH and NSF?
Yes, so if you go to the NIH website, there's a section for forms, and there's specifically one for Biosketches, and there's a big button there. And the button says the Science Experts Network CV. If you click on that, it'll take you to the portal where you include all your information, all the different parts to your Biosketch. And once you have that in, it's nice because your PI can log in and update their information. And then you can ask it to take that information and convert it over to whatever format you're using, whether it be NIH or whatever federal agency. Any other questions? Oh, did you have a question? Okay, yeah. Okay, so I'll turn the time over to Marlene, who will talk about NIH other support.
Great. Christine, can you switch it back to the NIH? Good morning. So for me, Christine elaborated everything on the Biosketch. So next is your other support. And that's a question that we got in from everybody, is that there is a difference between these two. And when you look at the guidelines for NSF or for NIH, that's what they talk about. Is the key for the Biosketch is they're looking to see if everybody's qualified and their qualifications in doing the research when they're reviewing the proposal. The other support is brought in on JIT requests. When they look at your funding, sometimes it'll be a generic JIT request, sometimes it'll be specific. This is when they request the other support to find out how much you have in other funding already there and what your effort that has been committed. They look at how committed the PIs or the senior and key personnel are. It should add up to 100% and not exceed it. There are some rare cases where it does, because if it was funded, oftentimes that PI will then discuss with their program managers if they're going to adjust some similar research or some of the research that's going on, but those are rare. Usually it does not exceed 100%. That's something that we aren't watching. That is something that the PI and the department needs to be aware of. We look to make sure that your other support is there in the JIT, and that it's there for all the senior and key personnel. But adding that up and making sure that the effort does not exceed is up to the PI and the department to review that. Key for these, and also when you're updating the Biosketch in here, is PDF files. That's something that we see that people will do Word documents to update things, and sometimes they'll attach those. We need to make sure that they're PDF files. For your other support, when you put it up there, all the other supports for all the senior and key personnel will be combined into one single PDF file. And it's nice to have it in the order that you put them on the proposal so that they quickly can see that you have everything for all the senior and key personnel. They want to know if there's overlap. You know, they're looking for that, so that needs to be addressed. And then when you're talking about including for the funding on there, they have everything, but we wanted to note that for internal funding, they're looking at programs like UCOP or things that are funded. It's not necessarily your startup funds or things that you're getting from the department. So those aren't included. You also don't include your training, your prizes, or your gifts. Those are not listed on your other support. And they don't want you, this is different from NSF, to list the current proposal. They just want you to list everything that you currently have. So that's a big difference between the two. So is there any questions on other support and maybe the difference between that and the Biosketch?
So no pending on the other support.
On the other support, you could have pending on it, and just not the current proposal as a pending.
Okay. So, but pending and current.
Yeah, so it's current and pending, but NIH does not call it current and pending. They call it other support. So I'm trying to keep to their language, but it is current and pending. Thank you.
Okay.
Cassie, any questions? Okay, next I'm going to have Victoria. She's going to do the NSF Biosketch.
Good morning. I'm Victoria Lynn, even though this says Victoria Whistler.
Victoria, before you start,
Yeah.
we have one question. Can you repeat it for me? Is it okay to use the new Biosketch on the form dated 2015 in the header? It does not appear to be a different form. Is it okay to use the new Biosketch on the form dated 2015 in the header? It does not appear to be a different format. How do we answer that?
The NIH Biosketch?
It's going to be NIH.
It's NIH. Okay, so it is different. There is a 2000, sorry, I don't want to block Victoria. There is a newer version from the 2015, I believe it's 2016, I'm almost sure. It's on there, it's under where Christine had identified under NIH's forms section. There is a Biosketch template that you can download, and you should be using it. However, NIH has not returned any of these applications that do have the older forms. What they are doing, and you need to be fully aware of this, is that they are, when they receive your application and it starts to go to the assigned review committee, before it's released to the review committee, a notice is sent back to our office and the PI saying that there's a letter that you need to review. And that letter says that your Biosketch is not in compliance with the current terms and conditions, or not terms and conditions, but the current format that they identify as part of the program announcement or the policy statement that they have for NIH in the format that you're supposed to be using with your biographical sketch. They do identify that they are not returning your application and it is not in jeopardy. However, you need to be aware it is not compliant. So I think the reason that they're pushing these notices out is to get people to be in compliant, to use the current form instead of the ones that they've been using for the last 3 years. Because we've seen them come through 2012 date on them. So we highly recommend that you download the most current format form, as well as I will mention a little bit later what Christine talked about with the new Forms E coming into play in January of 2018. So I'll go into that a little bit later. But I would recommend that they do use the current form, but they have not returned the applications because of those forms that are outdated, just so you know, that we have seen. But they are identifying that they notice it too. So be aware of it. it's kind of a warning in my opinion, without them saying that. So I hope that answers the question.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you. Continue.
Where's the clicker?
Okay. You're on now.
Oh, thanks. Okay, so I'm going over the NSF Biosketch. And basically, the Biosketch is a CV that's in the format that's required by NSF. So I think it's just helpful to think of it that way. It's required for all key and senior personnel, whether or not there's effort in the project, and it's a maximum of 2 pages. Previously, you could group together the biosketches into one single PDF, and that's changed. So each individual biosketch needs to be uploaded separately and separately paginated. Let's see. These are the components of the biosketch that with the specific titles that NSF expects you to use. Professional preparation. So that's basically, you can see it up there, the undergrad, grad, postdoc training, and the location, the different appointments in reverse chron order. Products is kind of a strange title. If everything listed is publication, then it can just have that title of publication. But if there's anything else like patents, copyrights, you would use the products as a header. And the synergistic activities, where you can list examples that demonstrate the broader impact. And I think it's helpful to point out that each biosketch is proposal specific. So it may be important for a PI or other senior key personnel to make some changes to it that would better exemplify the qualifications that the team has for the project and for funding. So no personal information. They don't want birth dates, marital status, anything like that. No social security numbers. I mentioned already that there's no grouping of the biosketches, and also no collaboration and other affiliation. It used to be that those were included in the biosketches, and now it's completely separate. There's a separate tab in Fastlane for the COA, the collaboration and other affiliation, and that is actually an Excel document. So it needs to be uploaded as an Excel document, and then a Fastlane converts it to a PDF. Any questions?
That it's proposal specific, and so that kind of addresses what Cindy had mentioned about maybe not being able to upload it to 424 ahead of time.
That would be a
Because
reason not to do it.
It needs to be changed to reflect the current.
Although this is
Although this is NSF. So NSF and Fastlane. Okay. Don't confuse them.
Yeah, I know. We're trying to make distinctions between NIH and NSF because they have different terminology that they use and different requirements. I also just want to point out that PAPPG, which is a proposal and award policies and procedures guide. A lot of the questions that we get actually can be found by Googling that. And another suggestion I have that's a little bit as an aside is if you're looking for something on our UC Davis website or UCOP website, sometimes it's actually easier just to Google it instead of going to those sites. I've found that I can access information sometimes faster and get better links. Just a little trick.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. This is the last slide of our presentation. So now we're going to look at the NSF current and pending support. Unlike NIH, these are required to be submitted at the time of proposal. There are no page limits. And so it's just a list of all their current and pending support. NSF does require that this includes the current proposal. So these are uploaded as a single PDF file. So you would create them for all of your senior personnel, string them together in one PDF document, and upload them in Fastlane. You want to make sure that you include the total award amount for each project that's listed. That's for the entire period, including the indirect costs. And it's important to note that because it does vary from sponsor to sponsor. Then you would also include the effort for each project in terms of person months. And you want to clarify whether that's academic, summer, calendar. So the projects that are listed should be from whatever source it happens to be, whether it's federal, state, private foundations, and so forth. And all the awards should be included whether or not your investigator is actually charging their time to that project. So whether it's direct charged or cost shared effort, you want to include them. The pending is going to include proposals that are already submitted or submitted concurrently to other sponsors. And as I mentioned before, you want to make sure you include the current proposal. NSF is really strict about that. Make sure that you don't include training awards, prizes, gifts, that sort of thing. So do we have any questions about the NSF current and pending support? No questions? Okay. Any questions about anything that we've gone over? Last chance? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. As we are getting ready, Chris, you have updates on proposals next. Chris is one of the team leaders for the proposals. You guys all know her.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining. And as Christine said, to piggyback on what Christine said earlier, I'll just jump right in because I'm sure you're all dying to know NIH is changing their forms again. Yay! Yeah. So as Christine said, we are changing from forms D as in David to E as in Edward. And that change is effective January 25th, 2018. It's really important to make note of this date because if you have a proposal submission that is due January 25th or later, based on the sponsor's deadline date, you are to use the new format, Forms E. There is a notice that I highly recommend that you guys read if you don't get the notifications that are sent out by NIH. It's notice number NOT as in not dash OD dash 17 dash 062. It'll give you the preliminary information and the specifics about the form changeover and how that's going to affect you and your future proposal submissions. It's also important to note of another date, January 24th, 2017, or excuse me, 18, the day before. So if you have a submission deadline that is for the 24th, it needs to be Forms D. It's really important. That day makes a difference. So it's really important to be working with your faculty in advance to make sure that we have the right forms for them to complete so they don't waste their time. The other important thing to notice that says in the release of the information about the changeover is by November 10th, 2017, again, November 10th, 2017, they're gonna have all the FOAs updated on their website. So then you can start to download those applications. Do not download anything before that because there could be changes if you find anything. I would recommend, like Christine had mentioned earlier, go in and see the differences between the changes for the Forms D to the Forms E. A lot of things, and I believe she touched on it a little bit, a lot of things have changed with the human subjects and the way the human subjects information is gathered and questioned in the application. So it's really important that you guys take a look at it and get familiar with it. Additionally, as we've identified as a campus, we have moved to a mandatory state of the SF 424. So your applications, if they're not using Assist, will need to go through the SF 424 application process in January when you submit for your February 5th, 2018 is the next large NIH deadline after October's. So it'll be important that you get familiar with the 424. We have training classes almost every Thursday from 9 a.m. to 10:30 right here in our Office of Research, conference room 129. You can email OR SPO training to register for those classes that we teach, again, almost every Thursday. We ask that you try to register so we ensure that we have enough laptops for everybody to have hands-on. If you have applications you want to try, bring your application with you. We can walk through the process with you to fill out that application, and you can save it and go back to your office and continue working on it and show your faculty what they can do. It's amazing. It's a great system. It works really well. So we highly recommend that you take advantage of this free offer of training. So much fun. Plus it gets you out of the office for a little bit. Again, additionally, it's really important to make sure that you pay attention to this changeover. It can be very confusing for faculty because they're busy and they may not have time to read it. So we look to you as the department administrators and analysts to really help them, educate them in this process. If you run into any questions or problems, call our office. We're here to help you. The notice again is NOT-OD-17-062. It's a good read and it'll give you good links. In addition, our office is working together to put out an email to notify you all on campus about this change and give you the links that we find also to help make sure that that word gets spread broadly around campus so that everybody is familiar with these changes and that it's not a surprise in January, because that will be devastating to the faculty, especially for the February submission. In addition, we have the current submission. When is it? October 5th. When is that? Next Wednesday. Do we have your proposals?
Too late.
You heard it from the man himself. If it's not here today, it is late. That means you do not get the full 5-day review of our excellent analyst review that we can offer you if you submit today. I sound like I'm selling something.
That's,
I'm selling
have
knowledge.
today,
In all seriousness, though, the submission deadline is next Wednesday. It is a very large submission. So we highly recommend that you get your proposals in this week so that we can get them assigned and start to review. We have 2 new people in our office. One is with us today. Daniel Cortez, if you can stand.
Hello.
He will be serving the College of Biological Sciences, and he'll be working with me. Another gentleman is not in the office. He's at training today, so I'll announce him when he's here next month. But his name is Alex.
Okay.
And he's going to be working with Eve in our office with internal medicine. So he's going to be shadowing with her and learning the med side of things, which is awesome. In addition, like I said, the submission deadline, we have new people, we have a lot of proposals coming in. Please submit as soon as possible so that we can give you the best review that we possibly can to ensure your proposal is the best it can be before it's submitted. And we recommend that you submit early. The sponsors, every single one of the major sponsors ask for a 2-day in advance submission. So that means if your proposal deadline is on the 5th, we ask that you submit by the 3rd. So that way, if there's any errors, corrections, things didn't look right for the faculty when they have a chance to look at their submitted proposal, you have time to make those changes. It's really important. And it helps to the success of your proposal or their proposal. So we really recommend it. Sorry, I'm begging almost, but anyways, moving on. Other than that, we have other deadlines. We have the California Department of Food and Agriculture, what is it called? The Specialty Crop Block Program. Say that 10 times fast. So that submission is for the concept papers. It's like a pre-proposal. And that pre-proposal requires acknowledgement from our office as well as a budget review. So you hear it here first. The proposals need to be submitted through our office for review and approval before they are submitted through the FAST system at CDFA. So that submission deadline is October 13th. It's a Friday. We recommend that those proposals are in our office early next week so that we can start getting a look at them, or by the latter part of next week, really, if you want 5 days. So a lot of people have questions with FAST. We do not have access to FAST. It's a system that does not allow for us to look at it, view anything in it. So we highly recommend that when your faculty start creating their application in FAST, They download a PDF copy and send it to our office so we can review the application that way. Otherwise, we're just piecemealing it little by little and trying to give you the best review we can of the documents that you provide us. So the PDF copy is really essential and helpful for us to ensure that you've met all the expectations and the requested items that are within that call for the CDFA, especially crop block grant program. Anyway, all right, moving on. So also on the 16th of this month is the R21 submission deadline for NIH. So that's another one for exploratory research that's really high volume proposal submissions. We want to make sure that you're aware of it and that your faculty are aware of it. Most of those are modular budget submissions. This is a great opportunity to use SF424 for your system-to-system submission. You'll see how user-friendly it is. The budget is a breeze. A lot of the information gets auto-tabulated right there, auto-filled inside the actual application form for you when you use SF424, eliminating a lot of administrative burden on you as well as the faculty. So that's another date to remember. Other than that, we have several various submissions for NSF and DOE and DOD for the CDMRP, the Congressional District, Congressional Medical
Mandate.
Yes, yeah, he knows it. So anyways, CDMRP is another system that we use through EBRAP. They have a lot of submissions coming up this month through various medical research and biomedical research. So if you're interested in that, that's another thing you should look at. Googling these websites to get the deadlines, there's so many, I just don't want to waste your time. So I highly recommend that you do that. Fastlane, the same thing, or NSF. You can Google them and get all the information on their various rolling deadlines that they have throughout this month as well. If you have any questions about proposals, or if you have any questions about deadlines or where to find the calls, give our office a call. We're happy to help you. It helps us when we know what's going on ahead of time, and we're here to help. So if there's anything that we can do to make it easier on you, please let us know. Do you guys have any questions? Nothing? Marlene?
One comment on the EBRAP for the CDMRP.
Take
Yes.
the microphone.
For the EBRAP system for the CDMRP, often there's pre-proposals that are done on that. If you list the business official as your analyst on that, it makes it so that we can see. It doesn't have to come through us for submission for the pre-proposals, or the LOI, but it's helpful to us to be able to see it if you list your analyst as the business official. Then when you get invited and the full proposal comes through, we can automatically see that when it comes through. Otherwise, we have to make a contact to CDMRP or EBRAP and have them add us to it so that we can go back and see that LOI. So just, if you can, it doesn't come through us, but please list us as the business official so we can help you when we get to the full proposal time. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other questions? All right, you guys are awesome. Thank you.
Want to mention that we're going to send out
Oh, yes. Yes. Like Cassie said earlier with Cindy's slides, that we're going to try to send all the information that you saw today about the biographical sketches and the additional information that some of the analysts have put together that's very helpful. We'll be sending that out to you guys so that you have access to all that information. And Cindy, did you have any other thing to add?
I just had a few comments, and before we get too far from the past subjects.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's related to all of these. So I think Chris already hit it. Since we're going to SF424 by the end of December, a lot of the issues with these forms, if you're using SF424, the company is the one that's going to be modifying those forms in the system, and there are validation checks depending on what what type of when you load what you're going after, it'll load the correct forms for you. You just need to be aware of the information that needs to be provided within those forms. And so I think transition to this new system is actually going to be a huge benefit for all of us in making those transitions with the form sets with NIH. So and add another reason that SF424 is going to be a really good tool for us. The other thing is when we were talking about current and pending support and everything and the accuracy of those, why is that important? Can someone tell me why any of that's important? Right. Those of you, how many of you had to get your faculty to do that extra training with NSF? Do you remember that? And we're going to have to do it again, right? And do you know why? We had a situation where there wasn't accuracy in the current and pending support forms. And there was, according to the federal government, Department of Justice, there was overlap that was not disclosed. And so they claimed we got supported twice for the same work. And it resulted in a compliance contract with the Office of Inspector General and NSF. And that's why we all had to do that extra training. And there was a tidy sum of money paid back to the federal government, okay, in a settlement agreement. So it is imperative, your current and pending support forms and identification of any overlap in the science must be disclosed on those forms. There are huge downside legal consequences if you are not accurate in those forms. Please double check with your faculty to make everything's listed. Make sure everything is there, including, as what was mentioned on the NSF forms in particular, even if you don't have a funded research project here on our campus, if your faculty member is like going to a national lab and is expending effort at the lab and using resources there, disclose that too, especially if there's any concern about overlap of science, all right? Very important, because I don't want to have to do another 9-month-long negotiation with the federal government, right? Okay, just anyway, it's very important. The other thing I wanted to mention is we have upcoming professional development opportunities. And I just wanted to mention them. So Society of Research Administrators International have their international meeting in Vancouver coming up in 2 to 3 weeks, like October 19th, 14th. I don't even know, and I'm president of the society. I'll be there. Yeah. So SRA meeting is coming up. Preminar, which is for all of our human subject protection folks, is around November 5th, competing with the NCURA regional meeting, which is in Portland that same week. But lots of opportunities for professional development. As you can see, there's a lot of changes happening at the federal level right now. So if you want to hear some of this and get trained up directly by the federal individuals who are doing this to us, because they're the ones that do the presentations at these meetings, I'd encourage you, if you can find the resources, to go to one of those meetings, meet your peers, meet the federal, network with our federal contacts. I think it's a really great opportunity. All righty.
Good. Thank you very much. Are you done?
I'm done unless there's any other questions. All right, thank you.
Thank you. So now that we all are confused on all of these changes, once upon a time, federal government was telling us that they are making everything uniform and so on and so forth. So this is the result of uniformity, probably. Grace is going to give us some updates on awards. And
okay, I just wanted to quickly bring to your attention in August. Okay, sorry, can I have the clicker? Okay, in August, there were some updates to the California Model Agreement, and I wanted to share them with the campus.
It might be off.
Oh. Okay, just advance it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe.
doesn't want to move.
Yeah, I think your slides are stuck. Let me try this way. There we go.
Okay. So I just want to say UCOP has put out a memo on the changes. It was dated on August 8th, 2017. And the guidance memo is 17-06. You can probably just Google it, UCOP Guidance Memo 1706. I highly recommend you see that. They include a red line version of the old model agreement and the new one, so you can see what the changes were. The link is up there. Okay.
Sorry.
One more. And I'm just going to go over 4 main changes that I saw. Okay, this is by no means comprehensive, but these were the 4 main ones that I saw. So on the old one, the Exhibit 4 was called Use of Pre-Existing Data, Copyrighted Works, and Deliverables. On the new version, it just says Use of Pre-Existing Intellectual Property. So there is a change. And also in this old version, there was no order of precedence given to the exhibits, right? It was just, they were all there, they were all equal. In the new version, they are not all created equal. Any inconsistency in the provisions will be resolved, that should be resolved, by giving precedence to the following order of exhibits. Exhibit D, which is the funding sources, Exhibit G, which is the negotiated alternative terms, and then Exhibit C, which is the model university terms and conditions. You will notice that something that is not there is Exhibit A, which is the scope of work. So don't try to sneak any terms and conditions into your scope of work because that's not going to be considered. And also, vendors was not defined under the old version, and there was some confusion about what was a vendor versus a subcontractor. In the new version, they do differentiate vendors and subawardees. So vendors and are not subawardees. They are subject to university procurement procedures, and also vendor services are subject to the indirect cost, okay? So the difference is a vendor provides goods and services, but is not an integral part of the scope of work. So they're not contributing intellectually to the project. That would be your subawardee. And lastly, patent rights were not discussed in the old version. Basically, it was silent on patent rights. You would negotiate patent rights outside of the model agreement. In this new version, the patent rights language is provided, and there are some options for you to choose from. So you don't have to negotiate from scratch. But anyway, that is all in the memo, and you can see the suggested language for patent rights. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions on that? Next on the list, we have accounting. Is there any update? I know that Francisco doesn't have any update. You have an update? Please. Come on over. Deborah.
Yeah, sure. Let me put this back on. I just turned it off. Trying to get my projector back on. Sorry, I didn't realize you needed.
So I'm Deborah Henn from the Contracts and Grants Accounting Office. I just wanted to talk really quickly because we're getting to the end of September, which is the end of our annual effort reporting cycle. And so starting next month, we're going to be sending out the information to all the campus departments where they're not meeting PI minimum effort according to campus policy. And you'll have a couple weeks to complete those. I don't have the updated information on our website yet, but I wanted to show you where that information is. The calendar for last year is up there, and I'll just be modifying the dates slightly. We have a Friday Veterans Day holiday this year, and we had the actual effort reporting deadline is the Sunday, so that'll be kicked to Monday.
We have technical difficulties.
What's the website though?
AFS.UC Davis. So while they're getting that set up, probably within the next week or so, you'll be seeing the PI minimum effort spreadsheets coming out. And the requirement is that any federal funded award that is considered organized research, has at least one account coded ORES, needs to have PI minimum effort on that award. And if we see awards that don't have that, then that's what you'll get on your spreadsheet. If you have a reason for not having effort yet on that award, such as you've got a PI who's going to take summer salary next year, that's fine. You just need to let us know what your exceptions are, and we'll keep track of those. For any non-responses that we receive funds that we haven't received a response saying that there's an exception in play, then we will go ahead and put in minimum effort if we don't see it by the end of the deadline. And then we will notify you to let you know that we've made that entry on your behalf, and you'll have an opportunity to adjust it or correct it or delete it, I guess, before we pass that information over to the effort reporting system in early November. So this is the accounting website. Can I?
Go ahead.
If you go to systems information and then the effort reporting system, and then go to general information, there's a link to the calendar. This will be updated, like I said, in the next week or so. There's a whole series of things that have to happen in order for me to get everything updated. One thing that I did want to let everyone know is there are no changes to the effort reporting system this year. The process is exactly the same as it's been in the past couple of years. We will be archiving the 2009-2010 effort reports. If you have, when we do run into audits and things where we need to produce reports for periods that have been taken out of the system, we still have access to those reports in the archive. So if you run into a problem, just contact me and let me know. Let's see. PI minimum effort letters next week. The deadline's going to be January 29 this year. Anybody have questions about the effort reporting process? Your PIs will be notified individually. I will send notices directly to the PIs to tell them that they have effort reports to certify. Questions? Go ahead.
What's the minimum effort that you'd be putting in for like the 0.01?
So there is no defined minimum for salary that's direct charge to the project. As long as we can see some kind of salary charge during the award period, then that will meet minimum effort. In the cost share tracking system, the smallest amount it can do is 1%. So if you want to really have minimum effort, you're better off direct charging a couple of dollars or a couple of days salary or something like that, because it's going to be a smaller amount than usually 1% of your PI's annual. So any other questions? Effort reporting coming up. Yay, one more year. We are working on an update for the effort reporting system that will integrate with UC Path. So that is coming down the road. And we also are building a new cost share tracking system that, in addition to interfacing with UC Path, will hopefully, and I'm really working hard to make sure that it is a lot more informational for the folks that have to use it, to help you work through the steps of the system and explain things as we're going along. So I'm trying to make sure that all the information that you need to understand what's happening is on the screen there for you. So when we're calculating what the 1% is in dollars, you'll be able to see the individual's institutional base salary calculated. You'll be able to see that multiplied by the percentage that you've requested and what your target dollars are that you're trying to cost share. We really are working to try to put a lot of instructions into the screens for you so that it will help you and you won't be so confused as to what's going on, especially those who don't do it very often. So new cost share tracking system coming, upgrade to the effort reporting system coming, effort reporting deadline January 29. All certifications are going to be done by then. You guys, we do a really good job on effort reporting. All of you have contributed to making this a real successful endeavor. And just know that we all appreciate that.
Thank
okay,
you.
Questions? All right, thanks.
Thank you very much. Nothing online. Well, we are, let's see, there is nothing else on the agenda. Any other general questions about anything you heard and anything that we tried to confuse you and we didn't do a good job? It's 5 minutes before 10. If there's nothing else, let's stop then. Thank you very much for coming. See you next month.